with, oh, there we go. Yeah, so you might have just had a thing come up, a pop-up saying that the host has started live streaming to YouTube. So if you need to, you can just get rid of that pop-up and then it'll go away and shouldn't interfere with your Zoom experience.
Sorry, that took a little while to motor up there, Ellen.
Okay,
Hi
no
everyone,
worries.
it's Ruth. I'm going to pop myself on mute again.
I think we've still got people coming in, haven't we?
Yeah, there's no one in the waiting room right now, Ellen.
No?
But
Okay.
we're probably going to get a few more coming along because there's not everybody that signed up is here yet. Could I just check? There is somebody labelled PS.
Oh, I think that'll be Patricia.
Patricia.
That's me, yes.
Oh, hi. No worries.
It didn't give me an option to change that.
Oh,
when
that's
I
totally
came in,
fine.
it just said, put your
No
initials,
worries.
but then it took me straight through. So that's me. Hi.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
Oh, and Ruth, I've just got a message from Martha as well. She was asking for the link again.
Oh, cool.
I'll
resend
by email.
that.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for bearing with us. So welcome and thank you for coming to our online Q&A tonight. My name's Ellen. I am the Mentoring Development Coordinator here at Look. I'm visually impaired and I am facilitating this Q&A tonight from the perspective of someone who works with young people who are going into university and experiencing the sorts of challenges that we're going to be discussing tonight, but also as someone who did an essay-based degree a little while ago now, but with some relevant experience as well. I've also got 4 speakers joining me to discuss the topic tonight, and our speakers are 4 volunteer mentors. So our mentors are visually impaired young people aged between 18 and 35 that provide support, advice and guidance through our peer mentoring programme. So I'll introduce you to them in a minute. But firstly, I just wanted to say welcome and thank you for coming to this event. We are going to be talking about the skills and the techniques and strategies that we can share for people doing essay-based and research degrees, university degrees. So a little bit niche, but obviously very relevant to all of you here this evening. So thank you for coming. I will just do a bit of housekeeping as well before we sort of launch in. So we're here on Zoom. I'm assuming that a lot of people are familiar with Zoom by now. What we're going to do is we're going to hear from our speakers first, and then there will be opportunity for you to ask your questions a little bit later on. So what I'm going to ask is that you stay muted for now. And if you have any comments or questions, then you can put them in the chat. So the chat is accessed on a desktop using, you can use the shortcut Alt-H or Windows Option Command H, sorry, getting my hotkeys wrong, confused. And on the phone, the chat is under More. So you can use the chat to put any comments or questions in there. And then when we get to the sort of opportunity for you to ask your questions, then we will invite you to unmute and to speak as well. So if you want to unmute, then the shortcut for that is Alt-A or Command Option A. And mute and unmute is generally sort of in the middle of your Zoom screen on a phone, sort of in the middle towards the bottom, I think. Those are the main sort of housekeeping. Generally, otherwise, this meeting is being recorded for our sort of records, and we're also live streaming to YouTube, which is very exciting. So hello to everyone, anyone watching us on YouTube. If you want to watch this back, you can go straight onto YouTube after this is after we finished here, and it will be uploaded straight up to our YouTube channel. And speaking of that, we will aim to be finishing around 8 o'clock. So here for about an hour. So I'm going to kick us off by introducing you to our lovely speakers. So I'm going to ask each of our mentors to introduce yourselves a little bit, tell us a bit about who you are, a little bit about your VI, and a little bit about your sort of education journey and what you're going to be sort of what experience are you bringing to share with us today? So I'm going to ask Jack to start with.
Cool. Hi everyone, I'm Jack. I'm 26. I am a class teacher in a special needs school for children that have been with SEMH difficulty, so taken out of mainstream schools for like behaviour related reasons. But often this is because of like underlying SEM needs, stuff like that. I have something called ocular cutaneous albinism, so that affects my eyes and skin. So my sight classification is 660 for those that work in like a sporting sense will know what that means. So my sight is like functional, but I need sort of extra help with reading, things like that. I accessed education by going to a mainstream school, but had a one-to-one sort of teaching assistant to support with reading things off the board, often had enlarged worksheets, things like that. After secondary school, I went to a sixth form, which was attached to my secondary school, so that was quite straightforward. And then went to, again, a mainstream university and used the note taker and some other resources through DSA, which we'll speak about in a bit, to access my degree.
Awesome, thank you, Jack. Hadija, can I come to you next?
Yeah, sure. Hello, everyone. My name's Hadija. I am severely sight impaired and I have a condition called cone-rod dystrophy. I don't have very much usable vision, but it was it's a deteriorating eye condition. So when I was in secondary school and in sixth form, which I went to mainstream schools for both of that, I had sort of varying levels of vision. But currently, and when I was doing my degree, I was using a screen reader and a note taker like Jack. And also in secondary school, I had teacher assistants. And when I was at university, I studied politics and international relations. And now I work as a policy officer for a national sight loss charity. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you. Ibs, can I ask you to introduce yourself?
Hi, so my name's Ibrahim. I'm 24 years old and I'm currently a student at the University of Liverpool. I have an eye condition which is similar to cone-rod dystrophy, but it's bilateral retinal dystrophy. And I also have keratoconus. And I lost my sight around the age of 13, 14. So I was actually in mainstream school. And then I went to the RNC for college. And then I'm now currently at the University of Liverpool, so studying psychology.
Perfect, thanks, Ibs. And Eve, last but not least.
Hiya, I'm Eve. I'm 20 years old and I'm in my second year of the University of Birmingham studying sociology. I, like everyone else here, went to a mainstream school for high school sixth form as well. I have a condition called Smith-Thackeray, which is a very complicated condition, which is just easier pronounced as cat's eye syndrome, which means I have trouble reading and seeing things from a very long distance. But I basically make do with an iPad and some support that my school and university provide sometimes.
Great, thank you, Eve. Lovely, thank you. So those are all of our Louis speakers. And in terms of me, I studied English, literature and sociology at university a few years ago. So lots of reading. And that's really what I'm going to sort of start us off talking about, really. So when I first started my degree, I hadn't really appreciated how much reading there would be involved, including the kind of further reading on top of your core text. So for me doing English, there was sort of set text that we were given, but what I hadn't realised before starting my degree was that there's a lot of further reading that you're encouraged to do as well, which can really which can sort of really pile up when you're trying to get things in different formats and sort of trying to get through quite big quantities of material as well. So that was probably the biggest learning curve for me in my first year. So to start with, I wanted to ask our speakers, what was the biggest learning curve for you guys in your first year of university? So Hadija, can I come to you first?
Sure, that's a good question. I think that like your first year, I will just say that it's such a transition, and I don't know if this is for all degrees, but for mine, you just needed to pass that first year to then move on to your second year, so it doesn't fully count towards your degree. I'm not sure if that's the same for everybody's, but that was for mine. Which did really mean that I could just really treat it as like, this is the year I'm going to figure out how to do university so that I can do really well for the next two. And so I think like the learning curve of, as you said, reading and the amount of things that you're learning is a big transition. And I don't know, to give like a little bit of context, I remember going like very early on to one of the first lectures I went to for international relations was basically my entire A-level in about 45 minutes. And I was like, that was 2 years of my life that you've just, okay, right. You've done that in less than an hour. Right, okay. So that was sort of like a bit of a change for me. But no, it was a bit overwhelming. And like you say, the reading there was a lot of that. So it was sort of a big exercise of time management and being organized and trying to just kind of stay afloat and you know, just do what you can, but don't kill yourself over it, is what I kind of felt like, and I kind of got that balance and got better at it throughout that first year.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point about using that first year to kind of find that balance. That's the right word, isn't it? Because it's such a change of pace, like you say. You sort of and there's a lot of new things as well when you're first starting. You know, there's you're in a new place, you've got lots of new people, whole new living situation often. So, and then the kind of style of learning can be quite different as well. So it's a lot of new things to get used to. Thanks, Khadija. What about you, Jack?
I'd say probably, I think the style of learning is very different. So going from a school setting where everything is you're very active within lessons and it's very hands-on and there's lots of shared learning, all that kind of stuff. Usually the sort of format for university degrees like ours, I did sociology as well. A module might be split into two bits of input throughout a week. So you'll have one lecture and one seminar. And the seminar is kind of like an A-level class. You might have 10 to 15 people in there, maybe less. And it's, you know, you're talking about a shared bit of reading or something that you've had a chance to look at together. Whereas a lecture is very much like somebody speaking at you for half an hour, 40 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, however long it may be. And that, I think, is very different to A-levels. And you certainly have to learn to be switched on and not just kind of drift through, which is, you know, it happens. But I think, I guess like that's quite a big transition in terms of like physically learning. And then, but also obviously it's important to consider, like, you know, even for visually impaired people, it's a massive change in your life. And, you know, you're going because you want to gain a lot of life experience and independence and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, we're not excluded from that. So I think it's really important another transition that's important to consider is sort of balancing your time, because, you know, the first year is for trying things that you've not done before, getting involved with sports teams, you know, going on nights out and doing socials and all of that stuff that everyone else does. And you just have to learn to sort of balance your time. And you know, the first year, like Khadija said, you know, it often doesn't count towards anything. So you know, other than getting into the second year. So you know, use that space as a bit of a trial and error period to see what you can do with balancing your time. And then as you go through the 3 years, like the degree is likely to be, you can generally get better at managing your time and prioritizing, I think is fair. I think I got very good just as I was leaving. So,
Yeah, I think I did as well. But I agree. I think that's what the sense I'm getting from both of you is that sort of that first year is about a lot about sort of getting a sense for what the rest of the degree is going to be like, isn't it? You can finding that balance as we've said of managing your time and figuring out what works for you, and figuring out what sort of support works for you as well is really useful to do during that first year when you have got less pressure to sort of be really on form and be really sort of trying to get really, really high grades, because often, as Hadija said, maybe not for everyone, but in a lot of degrees, the main thing you need to do in the first year is just pass that first year so that you can then go on to the second. So thank you, guys. And then speaking of support, we've spoken a little bit there about starting your first year at uni, but before you even get there are some ways that you can prepare and that you can kind of get ready for that transition, in terms of thinking ahead about what support you might need, and sort of planning that side of things. And part of that will be what you'll need to do for your disabled students allowance application. So you might need to fill in a long application and then also undergo an assessment with an assessor, who will discuss with you what sort of support you might need at uni. And DSA can include equipment support and human support. So we'll talk a little bit about what that kind of support is and how you can use it a little bit later on. But I just wanted to ask Ibs, firstly, how did you, can you tell us a bit about how you prepared for going to uni in terms of that kind of thing? How did you plan what support you might need, and what sort of went into that process for you?
So for me, I kind of had a little bit of a head start because I knew what to expect going to uni. So I did like a lot of reading on going to uni and stuff. So I knew that, because I struggled when I was in mainstream education. So I knew that you had to, I think if you're not familiar, students with disabilities have a EHCP plan. So that's like your plan where the school or the organization where you're at, they'll have like a specific plan to meet your needs, and everything's just documented on a piece of paper, really. And whether that's like having a note taker, you need special equipment like JAWS, screen reading software, Zoom text, all those kind of things, or extra time in exams, all written in that document. And so what a lot of people I think don't realize is when you're in mainstream or specialist education, all of that support is provided to you. So you don't necessarily have to think about, oh, what support do I need when you go into school or college. I know that's not the case for everyone, but for those who have EHCP plans and for those that it works well with, that's generally the case. And then when you go to university, it's like it's a big step, because now you're like this independent person who's now gone to university, and you're like kind of a bit stuck. You have DSA, of course, you do have the support there, but they may have never experienced someone with sight loss, or to your level of sight loss, and to that course. So truly, it's like you have to provide them with the information, with the help of like your support plan and the university as well, the disability departments, to put together a plan to meet your needs. So what I did was and something that I recommend highly to everyone going to university is request your EHCP plan from your school. Maybe sit down with somebody in the disability department, or with your teachers or whoever it is, and sit down and work out what your needs are, what fully, to like what equipment you need, extra time, if you need any breaks, and just make a big list them down, and then present them at the university, and I can assure you, it'll make your life a lot easier doing that.
Thank you, Ibs. Yeah, that's some really helpful advice, and that's something that everyone is entitled to find out a bit more about what support you're getting at school right now. That can then sort of help inform you to decide what sort of support you might need at university. And I think a key thing to say is as well, that the support that you get at university can always change. So what we were just talking about earlier in terms of the first year, using the first year to try things out and find a balance and figure out what works for you. You can go into your degree with lots of things in place and then figure out what works, you know, figure out what you do need and what you don't need, and adapt and change things according to your preferences. Eve, I just want to ask you, because I think you were sort of going into your degree a little bit more thinking about your rights and knowing what you're entitled to, weren't you? Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so yeah, I basically went through my education system with like having my parents and having my parents more in high school and sixth form, kind of like fight for like basically like for me to have the same equal opportunities as others to like see. So like when I went to university and like DSA gave me a lot of equipment for it, it was more the fact that like I had to step back and be like, this isn't really helping me, but because I knew like what I was entitled to and like what I needed, it helped me like kind of get to my own solution more. Because like sometimes what you're not aware of like is that what I would highly recommend is that you know what works for you. So for example, I know that an iPad works for me because I've had it for now 10 years and like my family and me know how to use one. So if you know what works for you and DSA is asking you, tell them, like trust yourself, because like no one knows your condition better than you. And so like don't like let them like try and like help you in a way that's helping them instead of you. Like be very like assertive and like know that like you're not being like annoying, you're actually just saying what you need to say to help you. So
yeah, definitely, that's lovely, thank you, Eve. Definitely good advice there for sort of just knowing what you need. And I love what you said about trusting yourself and trusting that you know what you need and that you know you deserve it as well. Brilliant, thank you. And just sort of carrying on that theme, I'm going to stick with you, Eve, if that's okay, because I know you also relied a little bit on building up really good relationships when you first started at uni. And that's another key thing for us to talk about as well, is the people that can support you in your degree. And we'll talk about sort of, I think Khadija and Jack have already mentioned sort of note-taker support, which is one form of sort of people support or human support. I think they call it DSA, which is a bit weird, but human support that you can access for helping you to do your degree. But Eve, who have been the kind of key people that have helped you and still are helping you in your degree? Who's kind of been the main people that you've been going to and finding support from?
yeah, so I don't have a note taker. It's quite unusual for someone within loss of height loss, but I just found it didn't really work for me. And DSA patron in my university, well, he's very nice. He's sometimes like quite unavailable. So I made it a very key point to like ask my lecturers and like told them about my eyesight. Like literally like the first time I ever met them, I was like, this is my name, I can't see. You're going to be stuck with me for 10 weeks. I just made it like a really good relationship. And then I made it so that like you'll meet people at university and try to meet people directly on your course, because like I think one of the things you get stuck on when you have a BI is that like you're very, very different to other people and like you're going to struggle like 10 times more, or at least I always thought that. But then sometimes when you get out of lectures and you haven't, I don't know, maybe caught down all the notes, or like you've drifted off because like your eyes have like lost focus, you'll realize that the person next to you also has no idea what's happening and you're just the same as them. And it's like it's really nice, a refreshing idea of like you're not actually any different. Like even though you may struggle more in certain aspects, like the people you meet, like your friend and your lecturers, will really help you and will understand, like as long as you try your best and are always like, you know, respectful, they will help you. So
yeah, lovely, thanks, Steve. And Ibs, I know you've built up a good relationships at your uni as well, haven't you? And you've sort of been more involved with the sort of disability support service, but also your module leaders. Can you tell us a bit about that and how you found sort of building up those relationships helpful?
When I first went to university, I thought like the first few weeks, I kind of thought I had everything in place, just as you would. But then I built a relationship with the disabilities department straight away, because I did have a few like teething issues in the beginning, which is to be expected. And one thing to note is that just because you have a disability and you're experiencing difficulties and challenges at university doesn't mean that you're like different to any of the other students, because every student, regardless of the fact if they have a disability or not, are going to be faced with their own sets of challenges. So don't be afraid to ask for help, because it can be a bit daunting sometimes, or some people might feel a bit they may not have the confidence to ask for help that they need, because maybe you might feel like a bit different to everybody else or with the peers around you. But just know that like this is nothing to be afraid of. Like everybody else, has their own sets of challenges, and this is yours. So by communicating with the disability department, what that's going to do is like they're like how shall I say, like they're going to organize all the support for you. So you let them know what support you need, and they will have things in place as well for you. But what I did was I was like, what's given to a person is based on like their experiences, with like our knowledge of like people with disabilities. However, living with a disability, I'm sure everybody knows that you can have like 10 people with the same condition, and they're going to have their own sets of challenges and the way they experience their condition. One person might have concentration issues, another person might have brain fog, or another person, it really depends on the person. So the specific needs to you is going to be very like individualized. So you need to make clear to them what exactly your needs are. And one thing that I think students find difficult is finding what support they actually need. Because like I said before, when you're in college and stuff, the support's given to you. And now the difficult thing is like, you don't actually know what support you need until you're faced with a challenge. Unfortunately, that is the case. So my first 6 months at uni was like, the first semester at uni was really like figuring what support I needed. And I made a checklist. So every time I went into a lecture, I was like, I'm having concentration issues. I can only go this long. I need a bit extra time. I need to put it on pause. I need breaks. I'm trying to use a screen reader. I'm trying to listen to the lecture at the same time, communicate with my note taker. There's a lot of things going on. And, it's not just visual. It's like your brain's on overload. It's trying to like take in all this information. And then, then you've got deadlines and everything. You need extra time. So what I did was I communicated first with the dean of my course. So that's like the head of your course. And I said, this is my situation. I want to speak to all my module leaders to make sure they're aware of my condition, and so that you can adapt each module. So I want you to think of your module is like kind of like a different subject. And now each one of those modules are going to have different, your needs are going to be different for each of them. Like one there might be loads of PowerPoint presentations, or another one might have loads of videos. It really depends on the module. So what I did was I figured out exactly what each module was going to entail. And then I spoke to that module leader. I was like, this is how it needs to work. This isn't going to work for me. This is what I'm going to need. And I just made a list with each of them. And that helped massively. I mean, till this day, I still communicate with my module leaders. Every 2 weeks, I'll have a meeting with them. They check up on me to make sure everything's going well. I check up with them to let them know, okay, I need this here, I need a bit of support there. And, having that kind of structure, it's really, really important, because you don't know, like, later down the line in the module what kind of support you might need, because you don't know what to expect from that lecture or from that assignment or that upcoming exam. So by having these things prepared initially, so before you start university, it's going to give you a massive head start, and it'll take a lot of the stress as well off.
Thanks, Ibs. Yeah, lots of really good advice there. And your module leaders are the best people to go to for things relating to those modules, because often they're the ones designing the modules, aren't they? They're the ones who put the modules together, so they know the work in and out. So yeah, definitely good advice to go and get to know your module leaders and get them on side, kind of thing. Thank you. So note takers can be a really useful resource to use, especially in sort of essay-based and research degrees. So note takers are people who essentially take notes for you in lectures, seminars, presentations, any sort of tutorial, anything like that. Their role is to take notes and then to share those notes with you, I think at a basic level. But note-taking support is sort of can be delivered differently across the board, and also a lot of us have different experiences of how we use that support. So for me, for example, my note takers at university, they did just that. They took the notes for me in the lectures so that I wouldn't be what Ibs was saying before, trying to sort of listen to the lecture and listen to my screen reader taking the notes at the same time. And that was it. That was the support that they gave. And I found that helpful, because sometimes I would write my own notes, but then be able to compare with their notes as well to pick up on any bits I'd missed, or maybe some bits I hadn't quite understood properly, and they would have sort of written it down in a different way. So that was kind of my experience of using a note taker. But Jack, did you use note takers in any sort of different way, or how did you use your note taking support?
Yeah, I think similar. Yeah, it's a really obviously useful resource to have, especially like you say, Ellen, if you're kind of trying to make your own notes, which is really good and a really good thing that you should definitely do. But there might be things that the note takers picked up on that you've missed, or they might just naturally interpret things slightly differently, which is really interesting. And in terms of going forward to sort of write your essays at the end of your blocks of lectures, I found the notes that were provided to be a really useful resource to kind of base arguments on. So yeah, and I think your relationship with your note taker can vary. Like some people will naturally become really close to the note taker, and that's great. I think in my first year, especially, mine was probably a bit more. Professional is not the right word, but it was like, oh, this is something that's provided, and that's that. We weren't especially close or anything like that.
Yeah.
But it doesn't. It's what works for you. It doesn't really matter. But generally, you find like if you're a bit more personal with them, then you might put a bit more effort in, or it's just nice. So yeah, like how you use them is entirely up to you, really. But I think
it can kind of vary who they are as well, can't it? Like sometimes they can be older students, so they'll be like masters or PhD students that have sort of done. It's really useful if they have either done or have some knowledge of your subject, but that's not always the case. But so when I had note takers, I had lots of different note takers. So I'd have I'd have just whoever was available, really. So I didn't always have a consistent person. But I think that's different for some of you guys. Is it Ibs or Hadija? Have you had different experiences of having like consistent note takers that you've used in a that you've had like specific relationships with, and been able to use in a different way?
No, go for it, Ibs.
Yeah, no, in the beginning I had like note takers who I just didn't get on. I mean, they weren't being able to provide the support that I needed. And I mean, you need, with a note taker, you need to have that kind of relationship with them, because they're going to be there with you most of the time, or throughout all your lectures. I mean, some students don't like sitting next to lecture note takers because they want to be with their friends or whatever in the lecture. But one thing I would recommend is, if depending on the level of vision that you have, like mine is like basically nothing, like light and dark and shadows, and I would recommend having the note taker next to you because they can explain things in detail, like if there's a diagram, if there's images and things like that. So it does come in very useful. And but like in the beginning I had about 3 note takers in like one year. They just weren't able to provide the support that I needed. And sometimes some students won't go and make that complaint, maybe because they don't know or they don't have the confidence. And honestly, like if you don't feel that your note takers delivering the support that you need to like let the university know, let DSA know, or whoever, like the organization that they provided that support through, let them know, because they will change that note taker for you. Yeah.
Thanks, Ibs. Yeah, important point about sort of advocating for yourself there. And what about you, Hadija?
I in my first year of university had loads of different note takers. Like each module I had different note takers, and depending on what lecture I had for that, like there was a different person. So it was a bit, and I kind of agree. I know that Jack used the word like professional. I think I had like a very like professional experience with those people just because I didn't know them very well, and like I just sometimes I didn't even know where they were there, and then at the end of the lecture I'd be like, oh, someone's emailed me the notes, that's nice. But in my second and third year I actually had the same note taker, and we did like create a really like lovely personal relationship, which was nice. And and I don't know if this is with everybody, but there were certain places at on my university campus that were less accessible to get to than others, and sometimes like I didn't know all the buildings on my campus, so I couldn't always get there easily. So I would meet my note taker in certain places, so that she would help me get there, which was like another really nice bonus. Just being sight guided to places, it just took a little bit of stress away from me as well. So I had a really like that's what I said about the first year, like learning what works for you and what doesn't work for you, just like how Ib said. Like I did say I'm finding it really difficult that all these people are inconsistent and they're all sort of delivering different styles of notes to me, and it's just not really, it's just not for me. So yeah, I was very lucky in my second and third year.
Yeah, no, I think that's an important point that everybody's made, really, isn't it, about kind of like figuring out what how you want to use the note taker support. Again, just going back to what we've been saying before, really assessing what you need, and then being able to make that decision for yourself, and then sort of move forward knowing that I do just want one consistent note taker, or I do want to be able to meet my note taker at a certain point and then go there, or I don't, or maybe I don't need to know who my note taker is, and I just want the notes emailed to me afterwards. Is whatever works for you. Thank you, guys. So
Ellen,
yeah.
Oh, sorry. There's already one question in the chat. Do you want to come to it after points 5 and 6 on our plan?
Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. Cool.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. Unless it's relating to research or libraries or deadlines.
It's moving on to another aspect, but
okay,
like an extension of. But yeah,
okay,
let's
cool.
go with 5 and 6 and then come to it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So the next thing that we wanted to talk about is libraries. And this is a particular sort of bugbear of mine, because the library for me was a minefield. It was quite daunting going into that sort of environment with so much material that I couldn't really access. And this is going back a few years ago. So I think that we know that things have improved now, and it's easier to some degree to get things in accessible formats now, but it can be overwhelming to try and know where to start when you're needing to write an essay, and needing to sort of reference different texts in your essay, and needing to access those from your library. So whether that's like actual physical books in your library or the e-library, which is a big sort of catalogue of of books and articles essentially. So can I ask some of our speakers to talk about how you navigated sort of this this situation and how you made it work for you? Khadija, can I come to you first?
Yeah, of course. So yeah, like as you say, for me in my course, there's a lot of reading, and for my library, we had like library assistants who were there to help turn texts into, or kind of get your readings in accessible formats for you. For me, I needed it to be in like an ebook form that I could actually listen to with my screen reader. But so other students who didn't need that, like sometimes my lecturers would just sort of scan pages out of textbooks, or would send PDFs out and things like that, and I wouldn't be able to access that at all. So I'd have to try and go to my library and get the things in the accessible formats. But unfortunately, that did kind of take a long time. It kind of, for me, it was like a month to 6 weeks maybe it would take to get that book in the right format, which is, you know, not great, especially because each week, you know, by 6 weeks we'd probably moved on to like far more, you know, far farther on in the course. So it wouldn't be useful to me by that point. So what I did at the beginning of each year and each module course, I would ask each of my, you know, module leaders what were the core texts for that course, essentially, and it's, what are the texts that are going to keep coming up, which ones would you say are the ones that are the most important for me to read, and so then they would give me that list. I'd give that to the library, and then I'd know that I'd have the foundation core readings in my arsenal, and I'd have it on time, which I think is quite good, because actually those things, I ended up using them not just for that year, I'd use them, you know, in my second and third year as well. So
yeah, that's great. And again, that kind of goes back to building up the relationships at uni, isn't it, with your lecturers and your module leaders, and being able to sort of essentially get their insider knowledge on like what you should be reading and what's going to be useful, and then sort of making use of that. So Jack, I know you sort of had an approach as well in terms of, you know, making your essays work for the materials you had available to you. Can you explain a bit about that?
Yeah, I think that's a very good explanation, and I think the word shortcuts is quite apt. I think my mum would describe it as corner cutting, but I disagree. I think it's taking the shortest route. So I think, you know, Hadija spoke about being really proactive there, which is brilliant. Another word I'd add to that is being efficient. So, you know, your course is likely to give you a big list of books that they recommend you read, and that's great. And, you know, to have really rounded knowledge, it's good to pick a few of those out. But for the purpose of writing an essay, you've got to think, well, what do I need to get out of this book that I've been recommended, or that I'm going to use? And often that is to find a point of view, or to find something to reference, you know, a quote or an opinion from a writer, something like that. So you don't necessarily need the whole book, the whole chapter, to enhance your essay by having a reference in there. So there's lots of different ways that you can do that. Firstly, the online libraries are really, really good, and I imagine as a consequence of COVID, they've become a lot more enhanced. So I went to the University of Nottingham, and ours was called Moodle, and it was like the sort of online platform for accessing text. And I'd say probably 90%, maybe more, of the texts that were recommended to you would be on there. So that's a really good starting place. But obviously, electronic copies of books are much easier to enhance if you're somebody maybe like Eva that can manage by zooming in on an iPad, or, you know, I mean, other brands are available, but Apple software is generally quite good at reading things back to you. So that's a really good starting point. When you click on books, you often get like 100-word summary of what the view of that writer is. So if you're being efficient, then you can use that to reference in your essay, as opposed to reading the whole chapter or book. If there is a book that isn't on your online library, you can maybe go on Google or Amazon and have a search for it. And often these places have features called Look Inside. So you can click on that button and it'll show you the first couple of pages or the last couple of pages of the book. So again, can you use those to find something to quote, something to reference to enhance your essay? What else have I got? Yeah, and I guess really think about your purpose. So if you've got sort of viewpoints on lots of essays, it's like constructing an argument and then concluding it. And so if you go in for a text and you've got a clear purpose of what you're looking for, then that will help you find find something that you need. Quite often with the online libraries, they have search facilities where you can search a keyword or a key phrase that you want to try and find to manipulate the text to your advantage. So use that. I think that's all my tricks of the trade, Ellen.
Thank you. Yeah, no, that's brilliant. I think it's a good point, to remember that just to use what's available to you. I know there was a few times when I chose a point of view for an essay based on the books that I had, rather than what I don't know, rather than anything else really. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing. You're being marked or graded based on your ability to make an argument, not, I don't know, how much you personally agree with an argument.
Ellen,
I'm just a little bit aware of time, guys, so I don't know. We want to talk about deadlines and essay extensions as well, but I'm a little bit mindful of time, so I just wondered if we wanted to check in with Ruth about the question that we've had, and then maybe we can come back to deadlines.
Sure. Hi, Ellen.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's actually from one of our participants today. It's Matilda. Matilda, I will read out what you said, but please feel free to take yourself off mute to add to it if you want to. So it's kind of going beyond slightly into like something to do with placement. So
I'm 20, so I took a couple of years out and I'm planning on going to uni in September. And my plan is to go into primary teaching and to specialize in SEN and teaching, but I don't know of anyone who's done it, and I'm sure there are. I'm aware that there is, but there are certain things like the placements that I just feel I'm not quite sure how I'll go from where I am now to being able to do a placement.
Okay, well, I think you're in the exact right place, Matilda, because we've got Jack here,
and Charlotte,
and Charlotte is also another one of our mentors who's sort of joined the session tonight, but hasn't spoken yet, but she's also here. So we've got a couple of people who can sort of chip in on this. Jack,
thank you.
Do you want me to?
Do you want to give some advice?
Yeah, sure. Hi, Matilda. So I did sociology as my undergraduate degree, and then after that I did a PGCE in primary education. So I'm not sure what route you're planning on taking. You can either do primary education as your degree.
Yes, I'm planning on doing I think they call it a BD. So yes, I'm doing the 3-year primary degree. Yeah.
Okay, so I didn't do that. I did it the other way, where they sort of which was, as you can imagine, very fun. So are you? Is it concerns around sort of the logistics of getting to placements, or is it?
Well, I mean, I think it just seems like a huge jump from where I am now, which is living at home, and I'm practicing with my visual impairment team locally, traveling and doing those kind of things. But I think what worries me, and I've done some work experience, so I know that I can, do it, but the idea of going to a placement somewhere that I know nothing about, a new place, that kind of worries me. Just
And that's perfectly rational way of thinking. The university that you're planning on going to, are you planning to be living at home, or are you going to be?
Well, the uni that is close by, no, I would have to live away from home.
Yeah, I think that's good. Like I moved away, and I'm really, really grateful for it. Like I mean, it's personal preference, but for me, I really wanted to go and be independent and to have an experience that was away from home. And so you just have to be like organized. Placements, like, you know, and you have to be transparent. So when I started my PGCE, I sort of, you know, made people aware of my visual impairment, and, you know, because they ask if people can drive and what the logistics are for placements, and obviously I can't drive. So the natural sort of consequence of that is that you have placements that are accessible via public transport. So my first one, I did it in Manchester. So my first one was like a little bit out of Manchester, so I'd walk to a train station and then get a train for 20 minutes or so, and then the school was like just around the corner from the train station. So what I would recommend doing, if you're not, you know, if you're doing it for the first time, is don't do it for the first time when there's a time pressure. So you know, go the day before or go the week before and sort of mirror that journey and familiarize yourself with the journey. You know, what platforms you need to be on, how long is the journey going to take, things like that. And once you've done it and you've got the muscle memory that you know you've done it, then the next time you come to do it, when you know you need to,
it won't seem such a big deal. I think it is just, I'm sure for most of the people on here, it just seems like such a big jump from living at home and having that security to not knowing what the situation, because my situation, I haven't been in any sort of proper education. Like, I'm doing my A-levels, but I'm doing it all from home. And I haven't been in education properly since I was 16, and that's when I was last around people my own age. So it all seems like a huge shift from where I am to where I want to be.
Well, I mean, yeah, and that's, you know, that's I can understand why you'd be nervous and apprehensive about that, but I don't think it should deter you from doing it at all, because I think going, and once you go, the sort of, I mean, I don't know if it's a consequence of being visually impaired, but sort of independence is, I find it's such a big deal for me, and it was when I was when I turned 18, and that transition from like 18 to 21, where, you know, you're out of home and sort of becoming an adult. Like, I really, really value it, and I think it's there's a saying of, you know, ripping the band-aid off, and you just have to do it, and you just have to commit to it. But that being said, you know, there's things that you can do. So you know, you sort of, the deadline for applying for universities is January, but, you know, people often their UCAS application off before that. So you know, you might know where you're going, you know, grade dependent, you know, in a month or two. So go and familiarize yourself with the place that you're going to be going. Go and familiarize yourself with the campus. You know, get to know the department that you're likely to be in, and, you know, where the lecture rooms are, where the seminars are, and, you know, familiarize yourself with the area, so that, again, when you go, it's not
such a big deal.
In one go. So I reckon I probably went to my university 4 or 5 times before I went, when I moved in the September. And it's that, you know, it feels more like home to you already, because you know, you familiarize yourself with it to, you know, to a point. And I think, and, you know, just from a more general perspective, not necessarily university, like other things that you can be doing now between now and next year, where you're, you know, starting to reintegrate yourself with people your own age, like, I don't know, is there any clubs or book club, you know, anything like that, you know, just small steps, so that it's not
such a big culture shock.
And I think that's, you know, that's great advice, Jack. And what I just wanted to add to what Jack was saying, Matilda, is that everyone going to university will be on that same journey to some degree. So I wouldn't want you to feel like you're the only one, because you're VI. And I think one of us has mentioned this earlier. There might be a tendency to think that because you're VI, then you're very different, and that everything is a lot more challenging for you. And there's a lot more that you have to account for, which isn't untrue entirely, but it's also really good to remember that everyone is in the same boat to a certain degree. Everyone's moved to a new place, everyone's starting a whole new setting, and everyone's trying to make friends with lots of new people. So it's that might be comforting to just think about as well, that everyone will be in a similar position, to some extent. Just to kind of put you at ease a little bit.
Thank you.
That sounds like sounds like a great aspiration, though. Good luck with it.
Thank you.
Hi, Ellen. It's Ruth. Do you want to? So Charlotte also has got some experience on uni placements. We could potentially ask Charlotte, and Ibs has also offered to talk. And then Pat had some questions about access essay writing tools and essay editing tools with iPads and citation software.
Awesome. So Charlotte, do you want to unmute and join in now, or do you want to add something? We can always
can you hear me?
Yeah, can hear you.
Hi, Matilda. Yeah, so I'm currently doing my PGCE in primary education.
Oh, how great.
So if you have got any questions, feel free to contact me. That's not a problem. I'm happy for you to find me. In terms of placements, as Jack has said, because you are VI, you just need to let them know and they will place you somewhere where you can get to.
Yeah.
On the basis, in terms of your actual placement when you're there, you will also do this thing called an occupational health survey. So basically you just basically it's a bit like an additional DSA kind of situation where you kind of just talk about what you would need in the classroom. So I'm I guess what you'd call partially sighted. So I basically was just I need stuff to be in large print.
So I'm similar. I mean, I'm partially sighted, but I have blurred vision, so everything is blurry for me. So things like writing just aren't accessible, so I have to use technology instead.
Okay, great. Yeah, so my left eye is blurry, so I can I have no lens in it, so I can understand that one for you. So I rely a lot on my one eye, so I can understand. So they will make adaptations for you. My university have been really good at going above and beyond, actually, especially with my placements. And I've been really lucky that I'm a 10-minute walk from my school, and it's a SEND school as well. So if you're lucky enough to be placed in a special needs school environment, they're really good at adapting for you because they're adapting anyway for their students.
So it won't be such a big deal for them to...
so it's a lot easier for them to adapt for you. So it might be worth asking if the university you're interested in has links to special needs schools.
Because I mean, I'm planning on going to Reading, and I spoke to the the course leader, and her specialism, she used to teach SEN, so it was really great to kind of meet her, and she said that she has loads of contacts in local SEN schools. So
you'll be fine. It sounds like it should go well. But if you've got any more questions, let me know, because I'm currently doing the PGC right now. So
I'm sure I'll think of something.
You've got Jack as well, but I'm in the thick of it right now. So I've just finished my first placement, so it can be done.
My auntie did her PGCE years ago, and I just remember her going on about how intense it is having to fit everything into a year.
It's very intense. I can confirm it's still very intense. I'm sure Jack will agree.
No regrets though.
I think it'd be great if we can put you guys in touch after this.
I'm happy to do that. That's fine.
We can do that afterwards, can't we?
Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys.
Got
have we
some
got-
questions from Patricia.
Patricia,
Yeah. And Ibs had offered to talk about placements. I'm really conscious of time, so I don't want to like cut Ibs off, but I think it'd be good to look at Patricia's questions because there were a few. Is that all right,
Yeah.
Patricia? Do you want to ask them or? I think Patricia.
I'm fine either way. So I'm most probably quicker to ask now, I'm on.
Yeah.
So hi everyone, thanks for the all the information. Just two things I was interested in. One, is there a particular citation manager you'd recommend that you've used that works with an iPad? And then the other one is also related to essays. What have you found the most effective strategy to employ to edit your essay? You might use a couple, I mean, I don't know, but what for you with a vision impairment has worked the best?
Thanks, Patricia. So I think for the citation software with iPads, I'm going to look to Eve and Jack, I think, because you've both mentioned using iPads. Do you guys have any suggestions on sort of software that you use for referencing or any sort of system?
For citations, I normally just look up because I still have no idea what I'm doing half time with university essays, let's be honest. I'm in my second year and I'm still like half just like guessing, but I'm doing fine. So I would just say most unis I think use like quite different citations. So from my uni we use Harvard referencing, but I know that's not the same for every uni, unfortunately. So I would just literally know, first of all, what referencing you use, whether it's Harvard, Oxford, like Chicago, I think is one as well, somehow. And just like make sure you know what's referencing. And then normally your university will give you examples of like how to reference, and there'll be lectures on how to do it. So I would just honestly, like whenever you can, use like a screen reader to like read out how to use the citation or use the reference correctly. And then if you have any issues, then like go to your lecturer, because like citations and referencing is like literally the bane of every university student's existence. Like we all hate it very, very much because it's like something you need to do, but you almost forget about it because you're trying to write an essay, then read the abstract that goes with the essay. So like referencing is like almost off to the side. So I would recommend always talking to your lecturer and always knowing what referencing platform to use.
Right, thanks very much. It's so you've never used a particular piece of software to do it?
No, I don't.
Like EndNote or Mendeley or anything?
No, I don't particularly use one. I just kind of ask my lecturers, and then if I'm ever struggling to like cite one, I will basically just Google on like my university's website what's the proper way to reference. I find that the most convenient because like it's what the university is telling you. So if you get it wrong, you can be like, well, you told me to do that.
Okay, thanks, Eve.
We've just had Charlotte put in the chat as well that Cite Them Right is a good one to use.
Oh, thanks.
So that's in the chat from Charlotte. So that could
just having a look. Oh yeah, Cite Them Right. Thank you very much. And does that work with an iPad? Purely with an iPad? Charlotte, does it? Or
it's a website? I think
it's a web. Oh, it's a website. Yeah.
Oh, it's a website. Okay, thank you.
I think you put the thing that you're referencing from into the website, and then it will
right
the reference that you need to put in your not your in-text one, but your like the one at the end.
Yeah, the bibliography. Yeah, the references.
It does also give you examples of how to cite in text as well, and you can pick whatever reference style your university uses. So you can choose, I think it's like Harvard, obviously, and then there's like Chicago, whatever else. So it's pretty useful. My uni recommends it. So I thought.
Oh right, okay, thank you.
Thanks, Charlotte.
And do you, in relation to the second part of the question, is there a particular way any of you find to edit your essays? Do you do it both visually and through audio, or and when you use audio, do you speed up the audio, or is there maybe none of the above?
No,
I mean, it's personal. Sorry, you go.
I'll do it quickly. But for me, I do it all through audio. I'm I actually, it's probably be really annoying for everybody else, but I use a screen reader, so I actually put all the punctuation. I listened to it, or it was first I'd listen to it just without the punctuation, just to listen to what my sentences sounded like, and then I would listen just to make sure I put all my commas and the full stops in the right places and everything like that. That was just for on like grammatical and spelling and things like that. So that's, and then this is probably because my sister's a really nice person. I would sometimes, if it was like an important thing, I would send it to her. I sent my dissertation to my sister to read, to like spell check it as well, which is, yeah. I have a very nice sister. But, yeah. She won't do it for anyone else unless maybe she'll try.
You're not handing out as well.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I think that's what I did as well, to be honest. I had, so library support, I had someone who would help me access materials in the library, and then I could also ask them to help proof and format my essays, so they wouldn't be editing any of the actual content. They would only be looking for things like punctuation or some random places where I'd gone into bold for no reason, or where the font had gotten different sizes randomly, but it's really easy to do when you're copying pasting from different texts. When you're using screen reader and you might not be able to see the font, that's quite important, because you can just have different fonts all over the shop and have no idea. So I would always have someone do a visual check, proof read of my essays, but like I say, they weren't checking any of the content. They weren't actually reading it. They were just looking for punctuation.
Can I just also say that for my university, because they knew about my visual impairment, they would put I only did this in my third year, but they would put like a little sticker on my essays when you were printing them out, and that would just say that this person can't check her formatting, so don't assess her on that. So that cool. That was actually quite cool. But I didn't, so in case anyone wants to know that one, that did take me until my third year to figure out that was actually a thing that they did. So it was also for other students who may have dyslexia, and so it's just things like that. It's quite useful.
Yeah, that is really useful. Because you are assessed on the formatting as much as anything else. They do drill it into you. Does anyone else have any pointers on editing?
Yeah, I would like to add a really good tip when like trying to edit is like I'm a procrastinator by nature, so unfortunately I have a very unfortunate habit of like doing things at the last minute. But I've actually not done that this time, and I've already started one of my essays. So what I've already done is like when I'm writing my introduction, I'll then like go back over it, and like if I'm really tired, I have a like voice tell me, so I just click on it, I'll read it to me, or I will like read it back to myself, and then like almost then you can like read it again like after a day of having just wrote it like with this first perspective, and you're like, that doesn't sound quite right, or that isn't like how I meant to say it. And it kind of helps like if you give yourself an extended period of time, because then every paragraph you write you can like read back to yourself, or have someone read it back to you, and then you can like almost edit it as you go, instead of like writing like a 2,000 or 4,000 word essay, and then like, because you never want to read it back. Like I never do that. I just send it off, even if it's like incorrect grammatically. I just can't be asked, so I just send it off to my lecturer. So it really helps if you like edit as you go instead of edit at the end, I found.
I love that. Do you put a sticker on saying "can't be asked" and then send it out?
Yeah, I really sit. Don't get me more marks though.
Yeah.
Again, it depends what works for you, doesn't it? Because I think for me, I always edited at the end because I just couldn't. I couldn't keep track of what I was writing if I was trying to re-edit as I went. But it just depends what works for you, because I don't know. Some of my essays I'd write the conclusion first as well and then work backwards. It kind of just depends what works for you.
That's also a tool, isn't it? We had sorry, I'm jumping in there, Ellen, because I was always taught, and I did a history degree, to write your introduction and conclusion first.
Yeah.
So you knew where your essay was going. And and I think like for a kind of a subject where you're arguing points in almost not arguing but kind of debating points, like, you know, eyes on the right, nays on the left or something, you know, that can be quite handy if you're going to take a stance like, I think that so and so's theory is right and that is how that war went, or whatever it is. Yeah, to introduce what you're going to do and then conclude it and then write your content. But it's actually Patricia's question about essay editing kind of really brings us into what the mentors ahead of the session, we kind of divided up today's session into various different points, and that was the last of the prepared sections, wasn't it, Ellen? Was about essay deadline management, and I think that really comes into editing.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you want to go to that?
Yes, yeah. If we're finished with questions, so we also identified, like we said, deadlines and sort of managing our time around deadlines as well, because we've already said that you might have a big quantity of reading to get through. We've already mentioned, you know, that you might have slight delays with getting things in accessible material. So time management is really quite important, especially when it comes to things like your dissertation, which is right at the end of your degree, or sort of any sort of big projects that you're coming up to. And a tool that we can use is extensions for deadlines. So that's basically what it says on the tin. It's when you are given extra time to complete your essays, just as you would maybe be given extra time to do your exam. So we have different, when we were sort of preparing for this session, we had different opinions in the group about using extensions, and I just wanted to sort of ask our speakers again to talk about that. So Hadija, can you sort of tell us a bit about how you managed around extensions, and what was your sort of approach to deadlines?
Yeah, definitely. So for me, I'm quite like a nervous, anxious person, I think, and especially when it comes to deadlines and things like that. So I kind of am a person who, I sort of planned for disasters. So I would, for maybe other people, it might just be like, take you a few days to write an essay, but for me, I would like dedicate maybe a day to getting all my sources and all the different readings that I wanted to use for the essay, and then I would, you know, spend a good few days writing it, and then I'd have a day to edit it. I might send it to my sister, like I said. So what I did is I really planned my time, knowing how long it would take me, and then I would add a few extra days as well. So I would actually sort of like then say, I mean, you know, everyone else might start their essay a week before the deadline, whereas I would start it 2 weeks before. And also university lecturers seem to have this wonderful tendency of all giving you essays like the last week of term or something. So yeah, that would be quite stressful for me. So I would plan to write my essays way in advance of that, maybe a month or something, just to really just spread them out. And that meant that I didn't tend to use extensions very often, but I did when I really needed it. So I sort of planned my time to and luckily, if they didn't have a disaster in my essay, that just meant that I could start the next one earlier, or be really nice to myself and give myself a break. But, you know, to each their own.
Yeah, no, that's a really good way of doing it, I think. And I just want to then go to Ibs, because you use extensions quite a lot, don't you? Can you tell us a bit about that and your sort of your thoughts around using extensions?
Yeah, so I at the beginning of each semester, I'll apply for like my extensions like straight away, and it's part of my support plan. Something that's another thing that I'd recommend is, even if you feel like you might not need it, just apply for the extension anyway, just so that it's there, because you never know, you know, you could have a bad week or a bad few days. You never know, that exam day, you know, you could have a migraine or whatever, because, you know, sight loss affects everyone in different ways. So just bear that in mind, and just like plan ahead with your extensions, even for your assignments. Depending on the uni, you could have up to 2 weeks, a week extra time. So I would highly recommend applying for those extensions.
Thanks, Ibs. Yeah, I think, again, you know, as everything we've said basically this evening is down to your individual preference, down to what works for you, and it's really up to you to figure that out. And it's an opportunity for you at the start of your course in your first year to figure out how long it takes you to write essays as well, so that then you can plan backwards and you can plan in advance to make sure that you've got time to do those essays ahead of your deadlines if you need it, or to plan ahead like Ibs is doing and sort of plan those extensions in advance if you need it as well. I think I used extensions as and when I needed them at uni. Sometimes I stuck to the normal deadlines, and sometimes I used extensions, especially as Hadija mentioned, when you had lots of essays sort of deadlines on the same week, which seemed to happen quite a lot. So I'd maybe keep some of them to the normal deadline and then use extensions for a couple of them. But I also used an extension for my dissertation, and that was actually really useful because your dissertation is a massive piece of work that you do right at the end of your degree, and you're expected to work on that while you're also still doing essays for other modules as well. So it's sort of an added layer to whatever you're already doing. So it can put on a fair bit of pressure. And I was just at the time struggling to manage the quantity of reading for everything, so my normal course and my dissertation. So I decided to take out an extension on my dissertation, and that was a longer extension than usual. So it was a 3-month extension, and that was so that I could do all my modules as normal, and then just have a 3-month period where I had nothing else going on apart from just my dissertation, so I could really sort of channel all my energy into the dissertation. And I felt quite weird about that at the time. I felt a little bit sort of like I'd failed because I really didn't want to take an extension out on my dissertation. But I'm really glad I did in the end, because it meant that I was able to put all my effort into it. So that is what I think we want to say about extension. So unless we've got anything else that's popped up in the chat, Ruth, shall we sort of wrap up? Because I know we've gone over time.
No, those were
really
all the questions.
So it's been useful.
Yeah, thank you. Those were all the questions I've seen come in. Please feel free to take yourself off mute if I have missed anything. There was Patricia also recommended to everyone that you can get mobility and orientation support through DSA. That is so very much the case. So do make sure that you talk about your mobility needs. And I know that we've got someone here from Thomas Pocklington Trust. If you're a young person, kind of sixth form age, or like in the process of applying to uni, sorting out your student finance, we cannot recommend turning to the student support services. Sorry, I can't talk now. It's late in the day. At TPT enough. They've got a fantastic team, and they can really help you as you're going through that DSA process and wording it right, so you get as much possible support. Because even too much is never a bad thing, but it's better to have more than you need than not enough. So really use the advice and guidance from TPT if you're in the DSA application process, or if you're at uni and think, actually, my DSA isn't quite right, you can still turn to them for more support.
Lush, thank you. Okay, so we're going to wrap up. So I'm going to ask each of our speakers to hit us with your top tip for any VI student going into studying an essay-based or research degree. So Eve, can I come to you first? Your top tip. I'm going to put you under pressure now.
I would just say be confident and know what you deserve and have fun with it. Like, you're doing the degree for a fundamental reason, hopefully that you enjoy it. So just always remember that, and like no matter like how much you will probably resent it at one time or another, just like, have fun and enjoy it.
Thanks, Eve. Ibs?
To be organised and proactive.
Excellent. Thank you. Jack?
I'd say to be efficient with your time, and make sure that your essay writing doesn't get in the way too much of all the other stuff that uni has to offer.
Thank you. Khadija?
Yeah, I would say know yourself and know what technology works for you, know how you like to read, how you like to plan your time. Just sort of learn about yourself and just take that first year to have that opportunity to learn about yourself.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. I hope you found it really useful listening to us talking this evening about the topic. Remember, you can always turn to look for student mentoring support if you're thinking about going into a degree, going to university, starting a degree, and you want to speak to someone who has been there, done that, like Jack, Khadija, Ibs and Eve tonight. We have mentors who are ready to support and advise you through that process and share all their wisdom and their top tips through our student mentoring service. So please get in touch if you want to access student mentoring. But thank you so much for coming, and thank you for sticking with us when we've run over time, and good luck with your degrees.
Amazing. Thank you. I'm going to stop live streaming.